Hello YouTube, welcome back to another Star Citizen Tech Talk episode. Guys, this is a different episode than we've ever done before. We're doing the great lawsuit debate. So we've got a guest on, his name is Almanac, and obviously ILW as per usual, and I'm going to be today's moderator, the adjudicator as such between the two parties to make sure that the points are kept to time as well as obviously the discussion stays on track. Let's see how we go, I guess. So anyway, welcome to the episode. Alright guys, so let's just take us straight into the conversation. So on my left I've got Almanac, and on my right I've got ILW and me as per usual. So Almanac, if you'd like to introduce yourself, that'd be great.
I go by Almanac online. I'm a marketer. I'm 30 years old, married, and I live in England.
ILW, just a quick rundown of yourself, just so we know who the competing for and against parties are.
I'm Infantry Lead the Way. As you know, I am the partner on Citizen Tech Talks channel, and we're going to be kicking it off here. It's going to be popping off. This guy is very knowledgeable in the Crytek Lawsuit. We're going to get into that. Go ahead, CTT.
Alrighty, so guys, the first thing we're obviously talking about is the Crytek lawsuit, just to kick things off. Then we're moving on to the REFUND lawsuit, which we're going to be discussing as time goes by even further in later videos, as well as the class action lawsuit against CIG for the guy that couldn't get his refund for over $4,000, as well as the Westminster legal law against Californian American law, how they differ and why there are so many differences between Westminster law and American law in relation to this kind of contract law. As well as obviously we're going to wrap up with good old Derek Smart and his input, and yeah, we're going to go from there, I guess. So guys, yeah, let's get started. Okay, ILW, let's get into it.
Okay, so from what me and him have spoken previously, what he has told me that he knows, he's read the documents, he sat here with a lawyer, and he's talking all about the Crytek lawsuit. Apparently, when it comes to the Crytek lawsuit, me and CT are both mistaken. He knows the inside scoop. He's going to tell us, from my knowledge of it, he's read all the documents. He knows the full thing. Cloud Imperium Games is going to be liberated. They're going to be made to be the shining knights. Crytek is going to be completely the bad guy, completely in the wrong. From what I've seen, from what I know, my limited knowledge, I thought CIG had wrongdoing. Apparently, I'm mistaken. Go ahead, Almanac. Explain to the audience why CIG is right and Crytek is wrong.
Well, for a quick clarification, while I have been through all the documents myself, I have also particularly focused on not only an individual who's a friend of mine that, as you mentioned, actually works in law, went through it with me and explained the aspects to it, but also a fantastic series by YouTuber Law, who actually is a contract and software lawyer, who actually also did an entire series on this. Basically, what's actually rather quite hilarious when people point to the Crytek and CIG lawsuit is that it didn't actually go to trial. That never actually made it to trial. They didn't actually manage to bring a case. The initial case that they tried to bring was their reading of the contract that that CIG only had to use they had to use their engine. They weren't allowed to use any other engine. It never actually made it to trial. Basically, they said that the exclusive contract meant that CIG had to use their law and their engine. That is actually not the case. An exclusive contract in contract law basically states that you have the exclusive rights to use this software. It doesn't force you to use it. You can cancel the contract at any time, pending the punishments within the contract, which is usually just a simple fine. You can choose to change engine at any point, and many games often do. This is a common thing when it comes to game development. CIG claimed that the contract said this. Now, what happened is that they actually got a dismissal. Now, contrary to what you see in movies and TV shows and things of the like, dismissals within law are actually incredibly rare and incredibly hard to get. The context of a dismissal is basically that if what you are saying is correct, then yes, a law was broken. It's not actually about the reading of the law in that way. For example, let's say you have a tail light out in Mississippi and it's not illegal to drive with a single tail light out. I don't know if it is, but I'm using it as an example. Let's say you are arrested, thrown into court, and sued or sued or trialed or anything like that because of this, because you had a tail light out. Well, what they say is, I believe that it is against the law to do this, to have a broken tail light out in this state. And if I'm correct, that means I have a case. The court says, okay, we'll take it to trial. You can argue the letter of the law on whether or not the law actually says that. You assume the person is correct. So the only way to gain a dismissal is literally to say something that, even if everything that you are saying is true, it is still not illegal or against the law, and you are still wrong. Contract law does not allow exclusivity in terms of forcing you to do something. You are allowed to back out at any point. You cannot force someone to use a particular product. You cannot trap them like that within contract law. You just simply can't. So when CIG brought this before the court, CIG filed for dismissal and they were successful. They gained a dismissal. That entire argument was thrown out to the side because the judge basically laughed Crytek out of the courtroom. They never made it to trial. They got not just one dismissal, but 2 dismissals throughout the case, which is almost unheard of. Anybody that actually looks into the law, I have heard, like, I believe it was YouTuber Law, I might be incorrect in this, but I believe it was YouTuber Law that read the original deposition of Crytek that openly said that in their entire career, they had never seen a worse written deposition in their entire life. In their entire career, it is utterly hilarious how bad the lawsuit went so bad that halfway through it, their own lawyers abandoned Crytek, and they had to hire 2 guys from a very small firm out of Kansas just to continue the lawsuit. And these guys were very cheap because their other lawyers abandoned it because they were losing money because Crytek were unlikely to be able to pay those legal fees. They could not win. It was a laughable situation.
So here's the question that I have when it comes to the Crytek lawsuit. From everything you said, the question that I'm wondering is, could CIG had beaten Crytek so badly because it's pretty much like the Goliath stomping on David, because Crytek had so little money to actually fight the lawsuit with, to get good lawyers with, and CIG just had all these funds coming in where they could get the best lawyers that they could ever want. We just looked at it. They made $1 million in a single day selling ships. Couldn't you think that Crytek might have actually had real things to stand on, and their lawyers just didn't argue it as good because their lawyers wasn't as good?
2 things on that. One, Chris Roberts used his own money out of pocket to pay for the lawsuit because he didn't want to use backer money. He openly admitted that, and the financials support that. So it wasn't based on CIG's money. It was Chris Roberts' money himself out of pocket. And 2, any lawyer, bad or otherwise, can convince something to go to trial. That is not the hard part. Fighting it in the court, fighting the trial in the court, is the hard part. So even if they had terrible lawyers, they should have made it to trial if they had anything that would constitute an actual case. The problem is they couldn't even present a case. The court openly said over and over again, you have no case, come back with a case. And they were shot down multiple times with 2 dismissals, as I said. So it isn't about who had the better lawyers at this case. You could argue that if it had made it to trial, but it never made it to trial, which is the key point of this.
A quick question. You might be able to answer it for us. So I had known that they had went into discovery. So I know
Correct.
this. I know that I don't know
Discovery
what the stages of the trial. So yeah, I don't know the stages. Is it discovery and trial? Is there something else between it? Tell us where they got to and where it ended. Go ahead.
The trial is always the presentation of evidence. The discovery is the finding of evidence, but you need evidence firsthand. You need to be able to go up to a lawyer and say, I have evidence that this person is doing this thing wrong. I wish to either take them to civil or criminal court. So they had to have evidence firsthand. They believed that they had their own lawyers, so they didn't need to seek out a lawyer for that. And they believed that they had a case when it came to their copyright. Discovery then happens, which looks at the minutiae, which looks at all the details of the entire case, goes through every single financial aspect of CIG and everything that Crytek has. All of it is why it's called discovery. And during that, you gather the evidence, you gather everything. And interestingly enough, what most people don't realize is that there are none of these gotcha moments in trial. That never happens. That is all TV and all fictional. in discovery, after discovery, there is a pre-trial event where they basically go through every single question they're going to ask, everything, and they basically know the outcome of the trial before they actually go into the trial. At least the lawyers do. The judge then does it in favor because you're trying to convince the judge. Nobody goes on the stand without knowing immediately what questions they are going to be answered and how to answer them. It's called being coached by a lawyer. You are told about those questions. So all of this has to happen before you even enter trial. And they never even made it to the coaching stage. They never even made it to that. They didn't make it through discovery because every time they tried to find something in discovery that they could grab CIG on, the court looked at it and laughed because it was nothing. They had nothing. It seemed like what most people were actually considering within the legal field was that this was something of a slap suit, in that they were hoping that the negative press of the court case, along with the negative press that CIG already harbors in some areas, was hoping to cause them to settle, which would end up with the Crytek ending up with money, which they so desperately needed at the time. But what they failed to realize is that, to my understanding, Chris Roberts doesn't give a shit about bad press. He does what he wants in this situation, so he didn't care about the negative press of the Crytek lawsuit, and he was happy to take them to town and utterly wrecked them.
All right, guys, so refund lawsuits. Now, this is pretty shaky ground for CIG and pretty strong ground for at least Westminster legal recipients. For Americans, a little bit harder, but under a class action would be able to legally be able to participate in the refund process. But I'll let you guys take it away. All right, so ILW, lead the way.
So talking about the refund lawsuit. So when in the past video, I had talked about how the refund lawsuit can be successful, because what we're talking about is getting a bunch of backers from a certain country. I say that the country has to be Australia because Australia has the most pro-consumer law. We have seen the Australian court obliterate Fallout 76. They've obliterated Valve. When it comes to pro-consumer law in video games, it is hand-down slam dunks, Australian court obliterating the competition. So we all know that in the interim user agreement, the old one, it said that 18 months after 2016, you were entitled to a refund. The wording is, if the game has been failed to deliver 18 months after 2016, you are eligible for a refund, no questions asked. So I'm going to say that the people of Australia, that they can get together and they can put together a class action lawsuit and win, because the game isn't what we were promised. The game isn't what they were promised in the beginning. CIG has said that if there is a delay, if it's not delivered by this date, we will offer refunds. There's already precedence of somebody taking CIG to court and winning, and them getting their full refund of, like, I think it was like $2,500, something like that. That happened in 2016. Now, Almanac is going to go ahead and disagree. Go ahead, Almanac.
There's a few points on this, interestingly. One is that, unfortunately, the specific wording of the ULA actually unfortunately breaks us. Now, this is something that is definitely capable of being criticized of CIG. This is actually a little bit scummy in terms of law. The way that they worded it basically makes it impossible for you to bring that kind of action against them. Now, you can argue this being scummy, you can argue this being immoral, but it most certainly is not illegal. The actual wording of the EULA is that after the date advertised as the release date, 18 months after this point, however, it very specifically states after that in the EULA that this date can be changed if situations mean that unforeseen circumstances, specifically the wording is unforeseen circumstances, delay the game, which means the date that they advertise as that you have to wait 18 months afterwards for, they can change that to whatever they want. And currently that date is undisclosed because they don't have a date, which means there is no 2/16 cutoff. If they turn around tomorrow and say guaranteed date 2022, and they do not change that, because they would well be within their rights with the EULA to change that. If they do not change that and you are unhappy with it 18 months after 2022, then you could. But because they have worded it in this way with no specific date of 2016 or anything like that, you don't get to bring anything to them, because the release date and 18 months after it is whatever they choose it to be, and they can change it whenever they want.
So at the time the user agreement was signed, there was
Correct.
a release date that they had publicized. The release date
Correct.
they had publicized, and it was in our video. We had shown it.
Mhm.
There's video evidence. It was like 2016. So they had said at the time we signed the user list, if we have not reached the 2016 deadline and gone 18 months past that, up to 18 months past that, you're entitled to a refund, no questions asked. That's just straight in the wording. And they had a release time. So it's not like they never had a release date. They publicized a release date that this is what it's going to be. And that release date matched that end user agreement. So the user agreement directly referenced that release date, what they publicized. What they have missed, I would say that we're going to argue unforeseen circumstances. Developing the game doesn't count as something unforeseen. It's not like the global pandemic, which is a real unforeseen circumstance happened. Nothing happened other than just developing the game. So there was no unforeseen circumstance. They missed it because they foresaw, it was all foresaw that they wanted to expand the project. They admitted it in their own videos that, hey, we're going to change the scope of what we're going to do. It was going to be, who remembers, the best dance space sim ever, now to the best first-person universe ever. The wording of how to describe the game that changed. The ideas of what they were going to put in the game changed. All the things changed. It was all foreseen. There was no unforeseen events. Go ahead.
Almanac, under Westminster law, as you know, when we're talking about consumer law, we are more than entitled to be able to go through fair trading or go through consumer affairs, whatever you call it, in either country. But at the end of the day, if a business changes from its original scope of agreement of purchase, the actual product then loses its original value and description and understanding in its perspective to become something that you didn't purchase. So by law, even in America, under a class action lawsuit led under Westminster legal law, we actually have the right to retain legal services to obviously, put a class action forward for a refund and have it granted with minimal fuss, because it is a change of description of product and service. It's not the product and service as requested or purchased, and it didn't come in the box as such as described. So, and that comes under even the eBay refund policy, the Amazon refund policy as well, in actual physical goods. So digital goods still come under that same EULA of initial stance, where if you've purchased prior to 2016, you have agreed to the initial EULA, which is the EULA that you agreed to. If there's any changes to the EULA since, or any terms of service agreements, as you know, there was a new terms of service that everyone had to sign if they wanted to, could sign at the time to accept the new terms of service or not. If you chose not to sign those terms of service, then you are bound to the original EULA and original terms of service still, and you may miss out on benefits in future from CIG. That was the exact clause that they used in the terms of service, as well as the new EULA write-up. I read it and I just shook my head. Not signing that. So what I guess ILW is trying to get across is that if you are an early backer, you did come on board before the new terms of service changes and the EULA reiterations and the SOPs, right, then you legally, especially under Westminster law, are entitled to take a class action against CIG and without question get your money back, every single cent of it. And if the Americans join in with us, it gives them about an 80% chance to get their money back as well. If not in full, a good chunk of it for their investment in that time. If you're past that period of time, it gets murky, as you said.
And there's precedent for other games that have been in a similar situation where they have gotten the refunds, where they have won the lawsuit. There's precedence for this in the Australian court. Yeah. But go ahead.
You are completely correct. You are 100% correct, except for one singular factor which unfortunately breaks it. Under California law, a fundraised game is not purchased. You have not purchased Star Citizen. It is not a product. It is a project in development that you are simply allowed access to. You are considered to be giving them a gift, and their access to it is your reward of that. Under California law, which is what it would be tried in, you would not be able to argue that you have purchased anything, which means that law does not count.
If you're in America.
That's California law.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. CIG are in America.
So wait, just real quick, guys.
Under Westminster law, it's very clear, mate. The bottom line is, ASIC have already told me and other people who have already got refunds in Australia, plus Crushboss, who's on our channel, that we're at any stage entitled to a refund because the product was not delivered as described or delivered on time as described. So yeah, Westminster law, maybe Australian consumer law is a bit stronger than English British law, but I doubt it. I think it's exactly the same. We're very pro-consumer countries, so I think you might want to go back and just have a look at that, because that's something I've been told by ASIC directly. That's Australian Securities Investment Commission, who oversee this whole fraudulent system, and it is no longer a fundraiser, it is now a private company, so they are litigatable as a business. This Kickstarter phase has ended. Anyway, back to you guys.
We're going to leave this all in the context of the lawsuit is not followed in California, the lawsuit is followed in Australia. So that's the context that the rest of this is going to go over. Tell me if we did win it. Tell me about the lawsuit in Australia, and if they won the lawsuit in Australia, what options CIG would have. Go ahead.
Fair enough then. Let's say, assuming you're able to get yourself a lawyer and you're able to actually make it into court. The court do not recognize the difference when it comes to video games. They only care about basic descriptions. CIG will simply argue that they are making a space sim. They were always making a space sim. They will argue that when you signed the UELA, it is very specifically stated that, one, they can change the release date whenever they like, which is the important thing. The UELA never specifically states 2016, which means they don't have to hold themselves to it and can change it whenever they like, as according to the UELA. And the other problem is that you'd have to also argue bad faith, which means you'd have to argue that they aren't actually making the game, which they would very easily be able to prove to you that they are.
Bad faith. Is bad faith, I know it's an American court, is it also an Australian court?
Yes, it is.
Is it? Right,
it is part of it. Yes, it is. Yes. Basically, bad faith and good faith, for those watching, is in good faith, you simply have to prove that you are doing your best within to actually make the game. Also, in terms of your donation, you only get to do civil suit if you have actually incurred damages because of this. So what that basically means is you would not only have to prove that you were, one, manipulated into actually giving your money to them because you did not know that the game was subject to change. You would have to argue that you did not know it was subject to change. Two, you would have to prove that the ULA says that they can't change the release date, which it specifically specifies that they can. And then three, you'd have to prove that you giving them money negatively affected your life in some way. And then on fourth, you'd have to prove that they're not actually making the game, all of which CIG would have no problem doing.
But there's precedence for this because other people have already brought CIG.
Hang on.
On completed games. The precedence is there's people that have completed games.
No. There's people that have taken Star Citizen itself to court and won. We can pull it up. We have people by CTTs saying as well on this same channel, there are Australians who have gotten refunds in Australia. So there's already precedence for it. And so when they bring the court, they'll say, here's the other court cases that they follow the exact same thing. Why doesn't the precedence matter, Almanac? Go ahead.
Well, it entirely depends on how much your issue. If it's one person asking for a couple of $1,000 back or their $45 back, CIG aren't going to care. They're going to want the good press of showing, no, you can have your refund back by all means. If you then start challenging them for literally hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, you can guarantee they'll go into the court going, no, we're not doing that. We don't mind small individual ones. We don't mind. Particularly one of the ones that won was a person that was completely incapable of playing the game anymore because they ended up inside an accident and they ended up with an injury, if you remember. CIG took pity on them and actually allowed them to have that back. And they even gave them extra copies of the game in case they wanted to allow any of their friends to actually get into it.
Sorry, is this the $4,000 guy?
I cannot remember how much it was, but it might have been.
And he didn't get a refund. The court overturned it and kicked him out, so he didn't get any sympathy.
That's what. But there was in that case, I'm definitely thinking of a different one. There was one where a person ended up with a damaged hand; they were unable to play it. I imagine that the reason why that person didn't make it is because it was $4,000. They don't mind a little bit here and there, but when you start actually causing a negative in terms of their ability to actually raise funds or anything like that, it's probably not going to work. All they have to do is just simply say no. But then there's also this final factor. Now, this is something I doubt would happen. If you did manage to win, I do not think CIG would do this. I want to claim that. However, they would well be within their legal rights to do this. Australian law, they are not required to follow. the court would contact CIG and simply say, okay, you've lost this case, you need to give up $10,000. And CIG can say, no. Australia goes, okay, then we'll talk to your courts. The court says, you have no jurisdiction here. CIG say we're pulling business from Australia. They cut off Australia. Several companies have actually done this, actually. They can cut off. The only way they can do that, though, is if they choose no longer to do business in Australia, which I do not think CIG would choose to do, because they'd be cutting off part of their fan base. But they legally could, but I don't think they would.
Let me just reiterate. ASIC have informed me and other Australians that we're entitled to a refund without question. Even CIG admit to that. So
have ASIC actually done discovery to actually find out whether or not CIG have actually done anything wrong that actually is liable to this, or is this based on people giving them a basic rundown that they may or may not have a case? I'm assuming it's not been discovery, because in that case,
yeah, okay. Crush Boss got $10,000 refund.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's
good for him.
It's without question. And this is the thing, mate. Like, I guess Australian consumer law is a little bit more pro-consumer than the Britain, I guess, because
highly unlikely. Australian law is actually based on ours, with very few differences.
Yeah. Keep in mind, I'm a college teacher and I do teach law, so let's just keep it civil. But what I'm saying is, mate, is that every Australian that has gone for a refund to date has got a refund. And ASIC have, and CIG has made it very clear that if you're an Australian citizen, they will not contest your refund.
So interesting. Not contesting is very different than not being able to. Them choosing to keep doing business on Australia is perfectly fine if they want to refund one or two people. I'm just simply saying that if you challenge them up to $1 million, they might not just roll over. They might go, no, we will fight it this time.
That's all business.
And according to the UELA, they could fight it very easily. They're just choosing not to.
But I want to take us to one more point. So I'm actually devil's advocate for Almanac this time. So let me ask you this, Almanac. The lawsuits were filed, and one were won several years ago. There hasn't been a recent one filed that we know of, and one within the past like two or 3 years. Do they still have a chance to win the lawsuit if we were to file a lawsuit now? Is it going to be different than they won them in 2016? Why couldn't we again win it in 2020? Go ahead.
Significantly different. Unfortunately, what would happen is you'd go to the court, and the first thing the court would do is say, why is it taking you so long? In terms of law, you have a civil duty to bring to the court as soon as possible. Yeah. If you leave it to wait, you do not get to argue damages. And the only way you get out of this, the only way you beat CIG, is if you can prove that you have been damaged. If you have waited this long, it becomes significantly harder to prove damages. So you have a highly unlikely chance of winning it at this stage, unless you can prove that. And once again, you would still have to prove bad faith, which would be very difficult to do, because all they'd have to do is say, we've recently released an update. We are making the game. And the court looks at that and goes, they're making the game.
So hold on a second. Why couldn't I prove to the court? Because I'm taking it as a class action lawsuit with several other backers. We needed time to assemble the team.
Let's role play this for a moment. One, when you entered into the project, were you 100% aware that the project was subject to change as they openly advertise at every point?
No.
So
yes or no? It wasn't openly advertised as a change. It was actually initially open to a single decision that the game would be excised. Then they took a vote in late 2015 to then say, right, would you want the game to grow? 4% said no, 88% said yes. So that was a change to the original scope of purchase. So actually, on that case, ILW's got it right, where the original agreed purchase with the original backers was that we got X game. Squadron 42, an add-on, as well as the change of Yulia and Terms of Service were also changes after the poll. So yes, ILW in that respect is right. Sorry, just being...
By all means. Wonderful. How has the $2,500 that you spent negatively affected your life?
You also have to think about it. So we're also going to be coached by our defense lawyer. So you're kind of blindsiding me. I haven't been coached.
Correct. I'll give you time to think about it then. I'll give you honestly time to think about it. Go ahead.
No. So you're more. You've got to play devil's advocate now, because you know the answer. So answer for me the same question you're asking me, since because you're very well.
So you're asking me, how would you argue that you have been damaged? Okay. Yes. So what you would have to do is you would have to basically say that You did not know that what you were doing was providing a donation.
Wait a second. Here's how I've been damaged. There's a global pandemic. I can no longer afford to provide for my family because CIG has our money. I'm in vital need of this money, which I put to the game. Please give it to me and my family. That's what
actually an excellent one. But here's the question that the court will ask. That's an excellent one. Here's the question the court will ask in response to that. When did you pay? When did you give that money?
Oh, no. As we haven't got a final completed product, retail product yet, if he is in financial distress at any time during the development, he is entitled to take that to court and argue that.
That is not what the UELA says, unfortunately, and that's what's binding.
We're talking about 2016.
Yeah.
We're talking about 2016. Yeah. So everybody in this backer, all the people around me, for this class action lawsuit, the refund class action lawsuit, have backed before 2016. It's me among other backers. We're all arguing that the current global events is the reason that we're bringing this lawsuit and want our refund.
And they would basically say that you would have to have brought this 6 months after 2016. If you believed that it was coming out by 2016, so not 6 months, 18 months, you would have to bring it out within 18 months of 2016, and you would no longer be able to argue damages because that amount of money over a period of the last 4 years doesn't affect your current standard of living, they would argue.
But
that's what they do.
It would be financial duress, and then he would then have a clause within the ULIA, regardless of the ULIA saying what it does, as the project has not come to full completion as retail product. He has not actually finished his purchase of the item. It's like sitting in the checkout. So under his extenuating circumstances, being that he's under financial duress at this stage, while the project is still in development, means that he needs to reallocate those funds elsewhere, and any judge in any court is going to see that is a fair request for refund.
They will see that it is a fair desire, but the problem isn't about your current financial situation. It is whether or not giving that $2,500 gave a direct result of your negative financial situation. That is what you have to prove. So unless you can prove that your financial negative situation right now is 100% caused by your $2,500 donation to CIG, you have no damages. Because they are not related. They are entirely separate events according to the eyes of the law. They will not care.
Well, in relation to California law, not Westminster law.
Including Westminster law, you still have to prove damages, and you can't prove damages 4 years after the fact.
How about we do this? I'll bring up actual Australian consumer law, and we'll go through it together. Does that sound good? Because the consumer law is very clear on this. I did a video on Ubisoft when I got my Yeti. Yeah, the game came bundled from America with the Yeti. Now, Ubisoft, after I went to Fair Trading and then to ASIC, to then tell Ubisoft in a very specific email in how they wanted it worded, that you give me the game right now. I don't give a crap it's an American promotion or not. I'm an Australian consumer. I bought the product. This is bundled with it. Under consumer law, this is what comes with it. Give it to me. Guess what? I got the game. Ubisoft had a big tantrum about it, and they kept on trying to give me US codes, the keys. In the end, they just attributed the game to my account automatically, which they should have done in the first place. What ILW is trying to get at is to say, well, regardless of what the developer wants, if you go to a class action, it's a media shitstorm, right? A media nightmare. And no court wants to get dragged in with a tiny little developer causing drama already, and all the bad press and Forbes and all that going on around them already as well. Any court in their right mind worldwide is going to go, look, it's too much of a hassle. There's over 1 million people complaining about this. Just give them their money back, get it out of court. We don't want to have anything to do with it, because if this gets to the media, then we're under question. So you need to understand from a court's perspective how a judge is going to see this in that respect, how his or her name will be dragged into the mud with all of the drama. No court in their right mind, let alone a solicitor who's on the prosecution side, is going to want to allow CIG to drag this out. Because just one person from that class action tells the media, it is a nightmare for everybody involved, especially CIG. Then CIG get the IRS to come in, the IRS do a full audit, they find out about all the shell companies, the Swiss bank accounts, as well as the Cayman Islands bank accounts, the property, all the other stuff that's been going on behind back closed doors we don't know about, thank God. And what Sandy did, right? Sandy did breach contract with the Colders. We know this. So you know, it would become very much a quagmire very quickly. It would affect the development extremely badly very quickly as well. That's not anyone involved wants. Would I be right? So we would then happily go, look, 1 million backers want some money back, give them their money back, shut it up, get it done, let's continue the project. And at the end of the day, it's not at all bad or good PR we're talking about. It's about the business sustainability and success and staying afloat. And if 1 million people want to leave, well, hopefully there's going to be another 1 million people that come in and back instead.
Let me ask you this. I'm gonna paraphrase. The news article will say, "Hey, we're gonna publicize this. 10,000 backers of Star Citizen file class action lawsuit in blah 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 blah." Is CIG going to fight this, or are they going to just give them the money to not have this bad publicity? That's the main
CIG do not care about bad publicity. Forbes, the single largest website for businesses by businesses, Forbes has done at least, I believe it's 3 to 4 articles. There have been multiple news networks, multiple YouTuber news networks. It has even been hosted on TV. They have had lawsuits from Crytek and other things. Chris Roberts has openly proven that he does not care about bad press. So the only way that this has any chance of even seeing a trial, and that is before you actually still have to prove bad faith and damages, which would still be hard to do, you still need to do all of that with a sympathetic judge to your plight, which is not easy to find and no guarantee that you would get in the first place, let alone being able to find the multiple firms of lawyers that you would need to handle a class action, because they are not handled by a single lawyer. They are handled by multiple firms every single time. So that is a huge amount of money. Most people that would actually be putting their money into the lawsuit would probably not actually get as much back that they put into CIG.
Okay, all right, so we're going to have to go ahead and move on to the next thing.
All right, guys, so now we get into the nitty-gritty of it, and we're going to be moving into the fraud lawsuit with Derek Smart and how that went down. So, guys, take it away.
Okay, so there's always been the big talk in the big circles that, okay, so CTT says it himself. There's multiple people that believe that CIG has embezzled, that they have stolen money, that they have Swiss bank accounts, that Chris Roberts has done really illegal stuff. I'm not saying I believe that, but I'm saying there's many, many backers that believe that. Derek Smart believe that. There's CTT believes that. There's a lot of people that believe that CIG have committed wrongdoing, that they can be sued for fraud, and that they can that an investigation can be done that it's proven that they're mismanaging backer money, they're embezzling backer money, they're committing real crimes with it, they're hiding it away in bank accounts and holes and all of this. Tell me why a class action lawsuit from the backers against CIG on fraud. Tell me why it would succeed. Tell me why it would fail. Go ahead. What's your opinion on the big enchilada lawsuit that's been talked about in the shadows and openly on Derek Smart's blog and other places for years? Go ahead.
Well, the biggest problem with this is that if CIG have done this, then by all means, rip them apart, shut them down, because it's scummy as hell to do, and it should not be done. And Chris Roberts would deserve to be put in jail for it. By all means, do that if you can do it. But here's the biggest problem that a lot of people don't realize. The law does not work on hunches. You don't get to go to a lawyer, throw money at them, take it into court, and then have them audited and done. You actually have to bring proof to the lawyer first. You cannot do it without proof. So you need to have a mole. You need to have an insider guy. You need to have somebody that can 100%, not strings attaching, not conspiracy strings attaching it together. You need the actual financial documents that show this transfer of money, this actual paper trail, 100% proving that there is a Swiss bank account, not a hunch or the likelihood that there is one, a guaranteed fact, and that or the amount of money that has been put inside there before you even can approach a lawyer. So you have to enter with proof. And if you ask for an audit without going that, if you just hire a third person to audit, CIG will look at you and go, you're a nobody hiring a third person wanting to look into our private affairs. No. Unless the court order it, CIG do not have to agree to any audit. So you have to be able to get into the court before any audit can even be done. But you need 100% proof. Not hunches, not likelihoods, not strings or anything like that, not smoke and mirrors, actual documented evidence. You need a paper trail.
Yeah, he's right, ILW, on that respect. So I point to Almanac, indeed. And at the end of the day, even if you did get that kind of information out of CIG, then you could get done for larceny yourself by stealing IP. So you're screwed either way. And the
CIG can definitely, there's definitely an argument that can be done in terms of how they've developed, what they have done with the money, things like that. You can have a discussion about the morality of CIG. However, they do seem to have very good lawyers that are particularly ironclad themselves. Trying to get them in court would be a very, very either impossible task or very, very difficult task. They're very good at covering their asses. There's, as I said, there's definitely a conversation that can be had in terms of their morality and whether or not they've done scummy business practices, but in terms of legality, they're very good at covering their asses, I'm afraid. Yeah. So you're very limited in what you can even approach.
So
I call them paperwork tornadoes.
So real quick, this is a perfect thing to go into the next point. Take us into the next point, CTT.
Sure. All right, guys. So, moving on to the next part. Now we're talking about the differences between the UK Westminster legal system that also encompasses Australia and New Zealand, for the most part, as well as American law. Now, just to give it a breakdown, if you guys aren't from America, from Australia, for example, or even the UK who's watching this, or even Europe, US has multiple states that have multiple separate internalized laws, which makes how America works super, super convoluted and super complicated, because in one state you can do one thing, in another state you can't. And if you cross a border and you live on that border, then you're bound by both laws, and you contradict yourself, and this is the problem. So Californian law is very specific with its own set of rules, very far much different to a majority of the other states in America. So anyway, being an American, how about we lead with ILW on this one?
I talked about we could go into Australian court under Westminster law and win the refund case, but you don't seem convinced that we could do that in California. That in California you're not going to win the refund lawsuit. Why do you believe that?
Well, there's a big issue. Basically, this actually happened within the Crytek versus CIG, because Crytek are actually based in Germany. What basically happened, and this is something that I mentioned earlier, is that they demanded that Crytek put up a bond of 500,000, and that was because they didn't believe that they would be able to even afford the 2 million, because they were currently in financial straits. The reason why they wanted to put up that bond, because there is absolutely no jurisdictional guarantee that Crytek would even have to pay. Crytek could have lost so bad that Crytek would have to pay CIG, and Crytek, being in Germany, could simply say no. And no country likes to extradite. They could simply say no. So they demanded that they put up a bond so that they couldn't get out of paying lawyer fees and things of the like. The same situation would happen in Australia. If CIG did not want to cut off Australia, which I believe they wouldn't want to do, which they could do to get out of it, but if they didn't want to cut off Australia, they could still refuse to do it, and after you winning the law in Australia, of which case the American court would then say, if you wish to win this trial, if you wish to get that money, you will have to retry in California law. And here's the problem with California law: they care about what the UELA says right then, right there. They do not care about anything else. They don't care about your interpretations or anything like that. As far as they are concerned, the letter of the UALA is what matters. And the letter states that they can change their delivery date whenever they want, and that the entire game is subject to change. And after 4 years, you would have to prove that it doesn't say that, which it specifically does. And once again, damages, everything like that. There's just too much in California law protecting them from you being able to affect them. So if they really wanted to, they could just say no, and there's be little that you can do. And it also doesn't help that you'd literally have to pay for lawyer fees to redo the trial. all over again in the Californian law after the Australian one. So it becomes this big, massive mess. They don't care that you won in Australia. They will give you money if they choose to. But if you end up going to California for it, you probably are going to either find it very, very difficult to win or almost impossible. Almost.
Yeah, that's the problems. But see, this is where we could help loophole them. If we, as Australia or the UK, lead with this refund class action, we could throw them under the wing. And that's what I say. There is a chance that the California law would be superseded because the leading argument is from a class action position instead of an individual position. Still hard to argue. Still, yeah, California law is probably the most complicated of all the laws in America. I know down south, which state is it? Is it Louisiana or Florida? Florida law.
I believe it's Florida.
Yeah, that's next level. That's even worse than Californian law, where people can get away with murder, literally in Florida. It's pretty nuts. So it all depends what state you're in. The fact they chose California is because it's so cliquey. California is trying to break away from the rest of the US at the moment. I'm sure you've heard about that political socio agenda by the governor and the localized government there, which is a bit concerning because everyone's now leaving California because of it. But discussion for
it's not going to happen. Cessation has not been very historically successful.
No.
So here's the big question that's been on my mind when it comes to the lawsuit. Any lawsuit that we file, this is going to be on a lot of people's minds. I don't know the answer to this. I figure Almanac might know the answer. If I get my lawyer and I unite the Americans and we get all our lawyers, and then you unite the Europeans and you get a lawyer, and he gets the Australians, he gets a lawyer, the Americans, the Europeans, the Australians, is there any way we could come together to file it in one court, or do we have to file it in each separate country?
You would have to file every single lawsuit entirely individually. You cannot do cross-national lawsuits like that. They do not work, especially within American law. They are either so convoluted, it's insane. Basically, you would have to somehow marry all of those laws together and get those lawyers of different things to actually work together, and even find a judge that'd be willing to take 2 looks at it. That is highly likely. You would need to do it all individually, basically, but per country, and each country would have different results based on their laws, but they'd still end up, irregardless, it would still be decided on one factor: Californian law, and Californian law protects them.
Yeah. Tell us about the loophole. Go ahead.
The loophole is if it is a compensation firm and it's an international firm, so let's say Stacks, let's say Firths, let's say Goldman Sachs.
Yes. Also
in the banking situation, but when we go there with the Deutsche Bank, discussion for a completely different lifetime. But if you've got an international compensation law firm, which is based in your country, the offending country, and obviously other plaintiffs' country, there can be cross-communication that can be led by multiple solicitors in a group, most probably partners in that respect too, so bigger money, but it can be done. It can be done through an international law firm.
The problem with this is that no class action is done by a single law firm. You would need multiple international law firms to work together. They are always done that. More than that, you would need more than $1 million. You would need closing on somewhere up to $50 to $70 million to try this kind of case.
Not under compensation law. No, because then the compensation gets paid out to the solicitor's office.
You're correct, but the biggest problem with compensation law is that compensation law 100% revolves around mitigation of damages. And then once again, you face the whole hullabaloo again of it's been 4 years, you can't prove that the amount of money you put in is a direct result of your negative financial situation right now, which means you can't argue damages, which means that doesn't go through. The lawyers don't even look at you. You won't even be able to hire them. They'll take one look at you and go, prove damages, and they'll say, I can't, and you'll say, well, I can't really prove damages, and we're like, then when you can't hire us, we've got bigger cases.
Yeah, but it's not about damages, it's about the product not being delivered as described. So
the problem is compensation law deals with damages. You have to have been damaged. So, they do not care if a company lies. They don't care.
Psychological damage, because
real quick. Financial damage from the global pandemic, because all countries share one thing in common. And that
can't argue damages 4 years after the fact on something that is unrelated. it has to be related. It has to be a direct cause and effect.
So you tie in emotional, psychological distress, and especially emotional stuff. You can claim depression. You know, this is how it works in the courts. You know this. You can use this.
Yeah, but you'd have to get a psychologist to actually say that you are depressed, and that would take months and months and months of lots of therapy before you'd even be able to get a psychologist to say that. It has to be on record. They have to be able to prove you are depressed.
You can go to a GP and get antidepressants with a click of the fingers.
That is
that's what I'm
mental
saying.
health plan, and then boom, you don't have to prove
a GP is not viable under a court of law. You need specific documentation that you are depressed.
A mental health plan is superseding any psychologist's official report because it's saying that you have mental health, and you don't have to any court worldwide disclose what form of mental health you have.
So just real quick.
You have to prove by an expert that you...
Wait.
You can't just go into a court and not prove something. That's literally the point of a court.
Wait, let me ask you this. Wait. All right, let me. I'll be the mitigator of the debate here. So let me ask this question. Very simple question. Very simple question. So I'm an American. It's very easy. It's very easy for me to go to my doctor and say, "Hey, man, I feel depressed." If I tell my doctor that, he's going to write me antidepressant medication. I'm going to have a subscription for this antidepressant. And when I go to the court and they say, "Hey, how have you been psychologically damaged?" Man, I'm on antidepressants. Here's the prescription. Why wouldn't the court accept that?
Because self-diagnosis is not considered under the law.
I'm not self-diagnosis. The doctor,
except the doctor is not a licensed psychiatrist to claim. You actually can't. I don't know what it's like over here in England. I don't know what it is over there because this is specific to England, and I believe it is similar to that of Australia. I would not actually be able to go to my GP and get antidepressants. They would force me to go into, at the very least, group situations that would involve a therapist or a counselor or something like that to see whether I actually needed it in the first place. They don't just throw pills at you, and even if they did, you would have to somehow prove that your depression is a direct result of CIG's actions.
ILW.
Okay.
ILW.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay.
So, I mean, what I'm saying is, it is like that in America. I promise to God, I could go to my doctor because we're not on a global healthcare system here. We're on a insurance thing, and just very, very simple, kind of logical as far as capitalist.
There's money for the pills and stuff like that. I'm not surprised they want to throw pills at you.
If they write me a subscription, they get more money. They get more. That's like in America where they mark the bills up of AIDS to $800. That's an American thing that they do only in America because it's all capitalist.
Okay, let's go devil's advocate. Let's claim that you can say let's claim that the court allows it, okay? Here's the thing. You still have to prove that your depression is a direct result of that, which means you have to bring in an expert that claims this kind of thing can cause a negative reaction and this depression, which will involve the courts demanding that you be assessed by a professional.
Okay, yeah, but you can get in a court-assigned psychologist, and then that gets done 24 hours after the initial hearing takes place.
Here's the fun thing. So you're actually advocating that you might be able to win if you lie to the professional that you're depressed to win.
Guess what? CIG lie all the time. This is not about your credibility as a human being. This is you winning a game. The legal system, honestly, the legal system is a series of hoops and jumps because it's a game. No, the law doesn't actually work anymore. It stopped working probably about 50 years ago when the end of the 60s came, okay? So let's look at the reality, all right? The 60s came and the government was throwing kids, 14-year-old kids, at the Vietnamese, right? Yeah, the law doesn't work. You look at the corruption in government, in all governments. The British government, Australian government, come on.
Oh, I'm well aware of the issues with our government.
That is, right? And then you've got the American government, and you've got these, there's so many power struggles going on. The law itself isn't up to date with the issues we have, and bringing in laws like stopping smacking your kids in Australia on the bottom, or giving kids a slap on the wrist for breaking into someone's house and stabbing them because they're under 18. The laws do not work, but if you know how to play the system, you will win. It's like playing Texas Hold'em and counting those cards. It's exactly the same game. There is no justice anymore in today's world. It's how well you play the game to win it. And I know that sounds like a very psychopathic, sociopathic statement, but very unfortunately, mate, the sick reality is that's the fact. And I've got...
Now, here's the big problem. Let's say you're 100% correct. Let's say all of that would work. You've now got to go to every single one of those lawyers in every single one of those firms with big bags of cash and openly tell them, hi, I'm going to lie to the court.
No.
They're not going to take the case.
No, mate, have you done any research of the 5th edition about the different behavioural types leading up to sociopathic behaviour? I've done that. I've done videos on it. What it comes down to, mate, is if you can play the game... the movie The Usual Suspects. Oh, by the way, ILW, someone called me, I'm the Aussie version of Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, I saw that.
How good is that? I love Kevin Spacey.
You do kind of look like Kevin Spacey, though. But go ahead.
Fucking awesome. Look, end of the day, mate, he pulled that role off beautifully. He's probably his best movie ever, amongst a bunch of others. But that's the thing. He played the system. He played the part to get what he needed. That's the world we live in. It's divisive, it's disrespectful, it's dishonest, it's criminal. But unfortunately, if we try, like yourself, Almanac, I know where you're coming from. I have that, and so does ILW. We have those same ethics, principles, and morals grained within our DNA. Unfortunately, mate, good guys never win anymore. You've got to step down a couple of rungs and fight these pricks face to face in court and play the game to win.
Let me ask you a quick question.
But
sick.
Do you not feel that it's highly dishonest to try and apparently
I agree, mate. I agree. But
wait. Let me ask this question. So I'm going to ask Almanac. I'm going to piggyback off that question, but I'm going to ask it in a very logical way. Isn't my lawyer who's coaching me on what I need to do? Isn't he going to say, "Hey, you're going to need to be diagnosed with depression from the point of point." He's going to let me know this in advance that I need.
Yes.
In order to win, I need to do this. So I'm just going to be. In order to win my $2,500 back, or however much all the other people will have me to win, he's going to straight coach me that I need to be diagnosed with this. So when I go, he's not going to tell me what to say and how to say it, but he's going to tell me what I need to do.
He will. That is exactly what
well, okay, then he tells me exactly what I need to say in order for him to win. So regardless if I have depression or not, my lawyer is going to be on my back, because when I get paid, he gets paid. Yeah. Right? So why can't we be coached by our lawyers exactly what to do to get the desired outcome? Go ahead.
Because because all of those transcripts and all of those discussions that you have with your lawyer are also all recorded and entered into the thing. And if anything comes of that in terms of that, the entire law firm gets basically shot down. Yes, you're correct that they do sometimes defend people that they know for a fact are guilty for the paycheck, but they only do so when they're already guaranteed the money, whether they win or lose. The problem is with this kind of litigation law is that you would only be able to pay them if you won, and even then, even if you could prove depression, even if you could prove damages, here's the biggest problem. You'd have to answer this one single question. Okay, you've been damaged. Okay, money was taken from you. Okay, you have gained depression. Why on earth has it taken you 4 years to actually come to the courtroom? Why did it take you 4 years to approach a lawyer? And you can't answer that easily.
Because of
I got
circumstances and mitigating.
No, I got the answer. No, that's not the answer. The answer that my lawyer is going to say is because we needed time to build an international lawsuit. We had to get several countries together and make an international lawsuit, and that took time to get us all together to reach out to each other to build a class action lawsuit of this many people.
You would need to show evidence that for the last 4 years you have been doing so. You would need to show evidence that you have been attempting this very thing. You can't just say that. You have to prove it. And to my understanding, you're only just even considering it now. And that is the issue.
That's why I say if Australia leads the charge and we work the constitutional law angle, that really does put us at the lead with this. And if anyone wants to jump in under us, they can be then carried by our legal team. That's obviously also transferred across the world because it's all the same firm. When we're talking about refunds, though, we're talking about it's not a civil case, it's actually an industrial case because we're stakeholders in a project. Okay, long story cut short, now we're going to get to your favourite part of the episode and your favourite guy on earth. He's smart, but is he? Good old Derek Smart. Take it away, gentlemen.
Okay, so Derek Smart was the first original front runner that speaks of the class action lawsuit. He was the one that said, "Hey, go to your trade commissions, go to your commissions, champion that in his blogs." If you've read Derek Smart's blogs, if you follow the project, you're going to hear the detractors. So if you follow the project, you may know exactly what Derek Smart said in his blogs. I know what he says. Many people know what he says, but does he have anything to stand on? Can Derek Smart unite the people and become the people's champions and lead the way to the fraud lawsuit and all these other lawsuits that we have been talking about with his money? Because he has all the money. He has all the money to fight it. He's a millionaire, blah, 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 blah. Why won't Derek Smart succeed? Go ahead, Almanac.
The issue is, one, a issue of bias, and two, current level. 20 years ago, Derek Smart tried to sue Chris Roberts because he believed that Chris Roberts stole the idea of Wing Commander from him. This was immediately proven in court to be entirely wrong, and they sided with Chris Roberts. After that point, he has attempted to do legal issues with Chris Roberts at multiple times. Now, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I believe I'm right in this because I remember reading it somewhere. I do need to look it up again. I believe that he is currently considered a vexatious litigant when it comes to Chris Roberts, which means he is not actually legally allowed, to my understanding, to actually bring Chris Roberts to court for anything without the court's approval because he's tried too much. And he is, every single time he tried, the only way that you get proven to be a vexatious litigant, to my understanding, is that you have to constantly try and sue with absolutely no case. He constantly tried to sue with no evidence of anything. He approached with hunches, he approached with conspiracy theory, he approached with everything. He has never once ever made it to trial, except in the case of Wing Commander, where he immediately got shot down because it was proven by the evidence that nothing was stolen. So he is not currently a person that's constantly proven to have no case. Probably not the best guy to be leading the charge on cases, if I'm entirely honest.
Yeah, Derek Smart is... Well, his last name shouldn't be Smart. Yeah.
Okay, so guys...
He's a Muppet.
All right, so we've talked a lot about all of these subjects. The main thing has been on the lawsuit. CTT, in closing, what do you have to say? And then Almanac, and then me, and then you can give the final outs. Go ahead.
Sure.
CTT.
So, guys, look, at the end of the day, CIG are not the most ethical of businesses. I think we discovered that clearly today. We have found that also that they like to throw a lot of paper around to confound the prosecution as well as give judges headaches. We found also that there are certain principles of business that have not been attended to by CIG over the last several years, 9 years. We found that there are so many things about this court case, this lawsuit, which do, I think, need a revisit at some stage in future by Crytek, Lumberyard and the courts. I don't think the courts actually, through discovery and through litigation, really spent enough time investigating the financial aspects of where CIG is not really being made accountable for. And that, all those heated discussion, I believe that both parties, including myself, have come to a conclusion that CIG are not a professional business by any standards on the international stage, but they are a business. They will continue to develop a project into whatever indefinite period of time there is. We've also, I guess, come to a conclusion where we have to also think, well, Is this something that we want to continue participating in for our grandkids to play, or is this something that you want to get out of now? And if so, and how, which best way are we going to be able to, from both sides of the fence, from Almanac and ILW's position, achieve this goal for the persons that are staunchly in opposition to continuing to be part of the project and would like to get out? It is constitutional right under Westminster law to not be imprisoned within any form of contract or agreement, and that your human rights do state that you are entitled to leave any project while in process. So something that we will definitely have to revisit later on the channel. Wrapping it up pretty much, guys, I'll let you have your final arguments. How about we go with Almanac first, and then we finish with you, ILW, to bring it home. All right, fire away.
Fair enough then. I personally believe that any kind of lawsuit, whether it be class action or otherwise, would be unfortunately not only more costly than you would actually get out of it, but also because very specifically, even the original UALA does specifically states that 1, the project is subject to change, 2, 18 months after the stated release date with no list of what that release date is, and 3, that they have the right to change the release date for literally any reason that they want. So unfortunately, your ability to contend that in court, especially Californian law, would be almost impossible, or I personally believe. You'd have to not only get a huge amount of money for amazing lawyers, convince those lawyers to even hear you out in the first place, and also get a judge that is actually sympathetic to you. I just don't consider it viable in the slightest. I honestly believe that there is definitely a conversation to be had in terms of the morality and the business ethics of CIG. There is a conversation that could be had there. Legally, I think they're too good at ironcladding themselves, so I don't think there's anything legally that can be done. So if there's a discussion on morality, let's have it. If not, I don't know. Go ahead, mate.
Okay, so here's the whole thing. So I don't want to sue CIG. So I just want to say that just coming out, this whole discussion is just on if it's even doable, because there's so many backers and there's so many people right now all over the forums talking about the lawsuit. Derek Smart's talking about it. There is hundreds, if not thousands, if not 10,000s of people talking, whispering about the lawsuit. We get comments in our channel all the time about people saying, "Oh, well, I can't wait till you guys bring the lawsuit." The reason I think that there is something to stand on and there's something here is because there's already precedents of people who have taken CIG to court and won their lawsuit and got their money back. So when there's precedents for something in law, when there's precedents for something, when the exact same case has been brought again and it's been brought 10 previous times and people have won, and you can show precedents. Hey, there's something to stand on here. When you bring it to a lawyer now, they're saying, hey, lawyer, this case has already been won 10 times. This person won 10,000. This person won 2,500. This person won this amount. There's precedents here, and we're talking about a class, and we're talking about a class action lawsuit of thousands of people all getting together. We'll have combined. We have the money to fight. We have precedents. We have it was brought in Australian court. If we can get it international court, do I want to bring a lawsuit? No, but do I think but is Almanac, CT saying the lawsuit is hands down unwinnable? They cannot say that because lawsuits have already been won. There is precedence for won lawsuits against Cloud Imperium Games. Okay,
sorry.
The precedent is CIG aren't fighting the lawsuits. So if we bring a class action lawsuit, CIG won't fight. Right? That's pretty much what's been said.
And
so
that's what the insinuation is. ILW is pushing towards. If you have numbers, you win the game.
Even when it was 10,000, Crush Boss got reprinted 10,000. So even when it was $10,000, CIG did not fight.
Yeah,
they just said, "We'll give you the money back."
Yeah. Keep in mind, Crush Boss did actually go to Austin and go through all that stuff with the devs and Disco Lando and all the other stuff, and yeah, if they tried to withhold him from his refund, it would have ended up a very serious issue because he had access to very, very, very delicate IP stuff at the time. So wouldn't have been in CIG's best interest either, on top of the Westminster legal constitutional, if anything else, law above anything else for his refund. So guys, yeah, just to bring up one more thing about what's going on in Australia at the moment in relation to something called the robo-debt. So the robo-debt is the government has stupidly used a computerised algorithm to throw false debts at people, and long story cut short, I'm actually part of that class action. I was given a $6,850 something fake fine, or over earnings debt when I wasn't on Centrelink, right? Because that's how it works here in Australia. Corruption, that's just the norm. Long story cut short, it is September last year has been actually ruled by the Supreme Court that was the High Court, one of the above, it's either the High or the Supreme, the two top ones, that it is truly and indefinitely an unlawful action by the government, and it is a criminal offence by the government. So, at the end of the day, guys, you can set precedents out of nowhere, and if we lead with a class action of 10,000 people or more from the Star Citizen community against CIG, it is in by far their best interests to not contest such a matter from such a large audience of persons requesting refund. So yeah, there is definitely a precedent in multiple different examples throughout the world where numbers win court cases, numbers win lawsuits. The Erin Brockovich case of that whole community of unfortunate people who had methane in their water, fire water was the reason for it. They won. Most of them had sadly very terribly passed, but the ones that did survive got paid out very heftily. It's how hard you push and how persistent you are. It's not about the money, especially through compensation solicitors. It's how you play the game. So anyway, guys, look, I'm going to pass over to Almanac and thank him very much for his time today.
Thank you for having me on.
Anytime, mate, anytime. We had a bit of a rocky start, but I think we've found that even ground now, and and there's stuff we're agreeing with, so that's not a bad thing. And ILW, as usual, mate, thank you so much for your time. And thank you, me, for adjudicating and participating. Guys, anything else you've got to say?
Nothing. Thank you for having me on. ILW, thank you. I think I've said my whole piece in terms of everything, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
So, here's the whole thing. So, the final thoughts not related to the episode is, hey, thank you for coming on. You know, we have said that we could bring backers on and be civil. That a lot of people think that we're anti-CIG and we're tabloids and all this. It may be tabloidish the way we look, but here the whole thing. CTT, he's all in good fun. He says, don't take him too serious. Take him serious, but not too serious. It's all in good fun. If you come on here, we're not going to attack you. We didn't attack him or insult him or have any type of hostility towards him. We were very civil. It got a little bit heated between the two, but that's okay. Yeah, that's okay. They're going to get heated. They're going to say things. They're going to piss each other off. But at the end of the day, we can all come together and be friends and be civil and present our arguments, present our sides. And again, thank you, Almanac, for the time of coming on the show, and thank you for the time in the Discord that we talked before this. CTT, just thank you to everybody. This is the precedence we're setting, that you can come on to this show, you can debate, you can give your opinions, and we're not going to attack you. No need to be hostile in the comments. Come on here and be civil, and we'll welcome you here. Go ahead.
If I can say something specifically when it comes to the comment section, this is specifically to those watching. It should be known that absolutely none of us are lawyers. Nothing here should constitute legal advice. None of us are professionals or experts. This is just our understanding of things. So I just felt like that should be said, rather than assuming that we may or may not know what the fuck we're talking about.
Right?
Let's be honest. As non-lawyers, we don't. We only have our general understanding.
Yes, and that's the thing. If we were to delve into, case versus state versus country, honestly, guys, those lawyers themselves have to go away for 12 months and research this stuff before they even think about even bringing it to a judge's face for pre-hearing. The whole depth of this thing would start and probably wrap up 7-8 years down the track to get to court, to then be heard, to then go to trial, to then be litigated against. That we're talking about 15
I think the
years.
game would be finished by the time
Right.
the class action lawsuit came out.
And that's what CGI's betting on. I guarantee it, right? Yeah.
Almanac. So we were not done. We got into the release schedule, server meshing. We got into a bunch of other stuff. Are you up for a round 2? And that is the Star Citizens itself development debate. Are you up for that at a later time?
Kind of putting me on the spot there in the video, aren't you?
Not really.
I will.
That's how we do shit.
I will talk to you more about the idea of it. I'm giving no guarantees.
Okay.
All right, that was
okay. Fair enough.
Okay, evasive. But anyway, we're just going, no wuckers, right? Yeah, but anyway, all good, mate. All good. All right, guys. Look, once again, thank you for watching the episode, and I'll let these guys take it out today.
So we've already said said what we need to say. I think we're ready for the CTT. You know me. Go ahead, hit him with it.
Alrighty. So anyway, guys, look, awesome episode. Thank you for watching. I'm CTT. You know me.
I am Infantry Lead the Way, and that is...
I'm Almanac, and hi.
And as per usual, and as for always, peace out. Cheers.
All right, guys.